Yeah, I did change, and I'm really glad I changed.
This one's wife. William versus Harry. Silent Strength versus Ginger Whinger. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. There is an interesting comparison that is to be made between Prince William and Prince Harry. Let's just have a consideration of what Prince William has had to deal with in his lifetime. This isn't an exhaustive list. I'm sure you'll think of other things that I may have not included. But he's grown up in the goldfish bowl that is the royal family. From the very day that he was born, he has been subjected to media exposure, scrutiny, criticism, support. Yes, he has a privileged lifestyle, and nobody's denying that. He will never want for anything in terms of a place to live, people to do his bidding, food on the table, money, etc. But he has had to experience a life that is not normal. He has experienced that he has to live his life in a goldfish bowl, where so much of what he does is commented upon and scrutinised. His parents divorced, and they did so when he was still a child. He experienced the death of his mother in tragic circumstances at a young age. He lost his grandparents not so long ago, to whom he was close. He has had to deal with the repeated unpleasant and unsavoury behaviours of his sister-in-law, this one's wife, and his brother, with whom he was once close. He has had to deal with this one's wife and Harry's attacks on both him and his wife, and also, of course, attacks by their supporters also. Some of the attacks being particularly unpleasant. He has had to deal with the fact that his wife was diagnosed with cancer, and then deal with the wholly reprehensible speculation about their marriage, circumstances in relation to her supposed disappearance, all whilst dealing with keeping a family together whilst his wife was undergoing treatment. He's had to deal with the fact that his father has been being diagnosed with cancer. He's had to deal with the fact that the family was subjected to racism allegations. In relation to all of those things that I've described, the only instance where he's actively responded was in relation to the racism allegations, where he stated, "We are very much not a racist family," and you could see that he was seething beneath the surface. But other than that, the approach of Prince William has been that of silent strength. That he has not sat down and undertaken interviews talking about how he was affected by the loss of his mother. That he hasn't gone running to a journalist to want to talk about how he views his brother and sister-in-law. He hasn't sat down doing heart-to-heart about the cancer diagnoses of his wife and his father. He hasn't written a book lambasting members of his family as he seeks some kind of catharsis. He has kept his own counsel. Undoubtedly, he will have discussed these matters with close friends and family. After all, he's made of flesh and blood, but what he hasn't done is air his private thoughts and feelings about these very testing matters to the world at large. He has exhibited strength, and he has exhibited a silence in that regard. Why is it that William has behaved that way? Well, he is normal, as I've explained previously. Therefore, he doesn't have an inherent need to control those around him in the way that, say, a narcissist does. He doesn't have an inherent need to draw reactions and fuel from people. Therefore, there isn't a driver to cause him to seek the validation, approval, support of the world at large. Instead, because of his ability to recognise boundaries, he understands that which must remain private, that you don't air your dirty laundry, that you suck it up and deal with it, that you discuss matters with those that are affected internally. He understands the boundaries. He doesn't function with a sense of entitlement. Furthermore, He doesn't have a malign influence upon him in respect of compelling him to speak his truth, to get it out there. Catherine was an empathic individual, and therefore, rather than cause him to take potshots of other people, she encourages and supports him within the context of their relationship, privately. Thus, this is what's behind the silent strength of Prince William. And then we have the contrast, which is the Ginger Whinger, the Prince of Pink Pancakes, old Fantapubes himself, Prince Harry. Now, he has experienced similarly difficult times. He's grown up in a goldfish bowl. He's had to experience his parents' divorce, the loss of his mother at a young age, the loss of his grandparents. He has been subjected to considerable criticism, although much of it has been merited as a consequence of his behaviour. He has had to deal with the fact that his sister-in-law, with whom he was very close, had a cancer diagnosis and treatment, although he was not directly told and has been distant, as a consequence of his and his own wife's choosing, from being able to provide support. He's also had to deal with the fact that his father has had a cancer diagnosis also. He's also had to endure the sustained devaluation that has been sent his way by his wife. However, there is a contrast between him and William as to how he has handled it. Now, of course, people are inherently different. Nevertheless, these aren't just subtle differences that might occur where somebody's a little more sensitive than another person. These are major differences, because rather than deal with these matters privately and suck it up, Harry has chosen to whinge. He's whinged when he wrote Spare, of course heavily influenced by his wife, whose fingerprints are all over that book. He has complained about Camilla. He's complained about his father. He complained, for instance, that he didn't get as many sausages as William. He whinged about the treatment that he received as a member of the royal family. He's repeatedly complained about press and media intrusion and has waged his own personal dragon-slaying battles against them. He's complained about the treatment of his wife. He's complained about the withdrawal of security. He has repeatedly ensured, through leaked information to the media with preferred sources, about a wide range of problematic instances that he sees as a difficulty in his life. He has sat down and undertaken various interviews where he's complained about his lot, and perhaps more than anything, a succession of complaints and whinges were contained in Wah, as South Park memorably called it, in relation to Spare, which was probably 50%, if not more, a whinge fest. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that Harry was not in the habit of complaining until the last few years. Hitherto, we didn't hear him banging on about the death of his mother. Now, she's resurrected more often than Lazarus. It isn't the case that he would do sit-down interviews talking about all of the difficulties that he'd experienced with the level of regularity that he has done as of late. He hasn't written books previously complaining about his situation, smearing other members of the family. So, although Harry fosters a degree of defiance and resentment, because as I've explained before, he does have strong narcissistic traits, they were kept in check, which was a combination of his own empathic traits and also, of course, the good governance of the organisation to which he belonged, the royal family. But then we notice that he suddenly turned into the Ginger Whinger. There have been bratish behaviours before, but nowhere on the same level as he has now, where many regard him as a ginger man-child. This is as a consequence of the malign influence of his wife. The difference is stark. Pre this one's wife, we didn't see much of these behaviours at all. Post this one's wife, it's whinge, complain, moan, poor me, victim mentality. And therefore, The clear conclusion to draw from that is he has become this ginger whinger because his wife has encouraged and facilitated that. It is often the case that the behaviour of the victim of the narcissist, particularly the intimate partner primary source, causes them to behave in ways which are poor, reprehensible, and unpleasant. People often talk about how that individual starts to behave like a narcissist themselves. The individual doesn't become a narcissist. You can't become a narcissist as an adult. It forms in childhood. But you can certainly behave in a way that's similar to a narcissist as a consequence of an external stressor, as I've explained before. Thus, with Harry, what has happened is that his festering resentment and defiance and anger and argumentativeness, which hitherto had been held in check, has been given an outlet. His wife basically turned the tap and said, Harry, you need to speak your truth. You need to tell the world about all of these things. Don't keep it to yourself. And she did so because it was entirely self-serving. As a narcissist, she wanted to control Harry with this supposed encouragement and support, and at the same time, she wanted to foster his resentment and his defiance and his anger to take potshots at the royal family, because that would enable this one's wife to indirectly smear them and thus have an indirect sensation of control over them also. Harry became the lieutenant of his wife. He became the puppet of her, and thus, with the supposed compassion, but it's false compassion, the supposed support of his vulnerabilities, the supposed it's time you rose to prominence, Harry, don't be the spare any longer, he was manipulated by his wife to not only air his grievances, but to do so in an embellished and exaggerated fashion, and to do so repeatedly. Accordingly, this environment whereby this one's wife, who has a huge victim mentality, was also encouraged in Harry because he stepped into and embraced their awful shared fantasy, as I've explained in a previous video. The consequence of all of this is that malign influence has duped Harry into believing that he's doing the right thing when he complains. He doesn't really see it as a complaint. He has been encouraged to see it as him airing his truth, issuing legitimate grievances, pointing out the unfairness of life to him. And why shouldn't he have such a platform? After all, he's always remained quiet. Thus, she has whispered in his ear and encouraged his behaviours, not because she supports him, not because she's compassionate, not because she cares, but quite simply it serves her own purposes vis-à-vis the pursuit of the prime aims, and she's puppeted Harry in that regard. Thus, when we compare the strong and silent approach of Prince William with that of the Ginger Whinger, once again by understanding the personalities involved and also, of course, the influence of a narcissist, which should never be underestimated, you're able to realise why one exhibits silent strength and the other has become the Ginger Whinger. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.